a lot of fans were taking shots at the New York Islanders organization, and we'll get into the NHL playoffs as we're going to go into the second round. We'll go through some of the games and our thoughts, and we'll make our picks tonight on who we think is going to win in the series. I think this was a good move by the New York Islanders, okay? Because if they went and I think they should have brought in a young coach. Lambert is a younger coach than Barry Trotz. He's been with Barry Trotz for the last, 10 years, 11 years on his coaching staff. Now, is Lane Lambert Barry Trotz? No. And nobody thinks that. But I think what Lou Lamoriello wants to do is he wants to keep the same type of style with this Islander team. This is the style that he wants to run. Defense first, offense second. Lambert knows Barry Trotz's ways. It works. It has been working on the island for the last 4 years. Islander fans are probably attacking the situation. Well, if you bring in Lane Lambert, why don't you just keep Barry Trotz? Obviously, there's more behind the situation. There might be more behind the scenes with Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz. And again, we might never know. And again, I look at this signing. Is this going to make the Islanders a Stanley Cup championship team? I think going into the season, everybody had a lot of the analysts thought that the Islanders were good enough to win the Stanley Cup. Now they're going into the offseason. The Islanders are going to have to decide on what they're going to do. They gave Bailey that extended contract 2 years ago. They're going to have to do something with Josh Bailey. They need to get rid of that contract. Maybe take on another bad contract or trade away a pick for Josh Bailey. They could trade their 13th pick.
Yep.
They could decide, you know what? We'll trade the 13th pick away to get rid of Josh Bailey's contract, where we could bring in a Philip Forsberg and take that extra $5 million to bring in a Philip Forsberg. What does that do for you? It gets you that superstar goal scorer to play with Barzal. You do lose your 13th pick, but hey, listen, Barry, when you look at Lou Lamoriello, how many first-round picks has he had in the last couple of years? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, 2 the first year, and then I think only 1 since then.
It was Wallstrom and Dobson.
Right,
That's it.
Exactly.
And I was there.
Yep.
He hasn't had a first-round draft pick since then. And I don't honestly, sitting here today, think that Lambert is the answer to the Islanders' success in the Stanley Cup. Now, he could be. I don't know. When he did take over for Barry Trotz with the COVID situation, I think he has a winning record.
Lou Lamoriello was quoted in saying that he liked it. He liked the way he was leading the team and connecting with the players, and that was a big reason why he made that decision.
I don't believe that. I think Lou's just trying to find a way to hide it. I mean, I think there's a lot more extensive stuff that's happened.
He said Lou Lamoriello said that a major reason for this move was the stretch in January when Lambert took over for Trotz for the absence to deal with some family matters and showed impressive leadership.
Yes, and he's a great leader, and Barry Trotz would keep him on it. The only reason why Barry Trotz would have him on his coaching staff is if he's anything like Barry Trotz. And Barry Trotz is a family man, and he's a great leader. And I think Lane Lambert, he's a younger guy. He's a younger Barry Trotz.
57 years old. And
we've seen that. Look at Washington. What did Washington do when they decided to part ways with Barry Trotz? They hired one of his disciples. That's what they did. That's what they did.
Mike Sullivan coaches. Oh no, he coaches Pittsburgh. Sorry.
No,
it was Todd Richards, and then he got fired after 2 years. Now it's Laviolette.
Yes, and Todd Richards did very well over there with Washington. It just he was trying. People were comparing him to Barry Trotz. It didn't work out over there, but he had winning seasons every year that he was there with the Washington Capitals. They made the playoffs both years. He just couldn't get over the hump, and they wanted to bring in another voice. And Peter Laviolette, who's a very successful coach in the NHL, he became available, and they fired him to bring in a better coach. Now, again, Lane Lambert could be better than Barry Trotz. He could take over Barry Trotz, this Islander team, and take them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and win a Stanley Cup. The Islanders needed to bring in a voice that they already heard and they already trust. And Lou was keeping all the same players. Look, he re-signed Zach Parise. Chara's probably going to be gone. I believe he's going to go back to Boston. I really do. I think he'll play one more year with Boston or he'll retire with Boston. Who knows? And Boston, they're not going to have to pay him a lot of money because they're going to lose players. Right. So he could go back to Boston on a cheap, and And who knows? He could be the captain of the team because they're going to lose their captain in the offseason. So who knows? The fact is right now where you look at the Islanders, and I know Islander fans are all over social media, why would you bring in the assistant coach when you had the coach? And the fact is nobody's ever going to know what Lou and what Lou had behind it. Nobody knows. And I don't think Lou is ever going to tell the truth until he decides to write a memoir or he retires or his son, he dies and his son takes out his memoirs and actually puts a book out there and some author puts a book out for him. Nobody's going to know. I think it's a lot more in depth. I don't know much about Lambert, but I can tell you this. Everything that we've heard about this guy is he's a leader and the young players respect him. And I think it has a lot to do with the Sorokin-Varlamov thing. Sorokin should have been playing 90% of the games in the second half of the season. When you have a goalie that good, who played sensational all season long, and Varlamov, it made no sense. It made no sense.
It also seems like they're also trying to keep a lot of the assistant coaches intact, too, that Trotz had. Now, whether they all stay or not is another question, but the goaltending coach is a particularly big one that once they got Trotz initially in Lamoriello, that was the big deal. Even before Sorokin came in, Leonard had a great year with the Islanders before he went to Vegas, and then Varlamov, when he first got there, was playing well for the Islanders, and then obviously fell off the way he did this year.
Now let's get into the NHL playoffs, okay? And I obviously... This is probably the best time to watch hockey. I really believe the second round is where the best teams are. You expect to see some of the best hockey in the second round. And the series that really stands out, the two series that really stand out to me is the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning and the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I look at Colorado and St. Louis. Whoever comes out of this series, I think is going to the Stanley Cup. As much as I like Calgary, and I would love to see Calgary versus, everybody heard me say it, I would love to see the speed of Calgary versus the all-around talent of the Avalanche. I would love to see that in the Western Conference Finals. There's something about St. Louis, especially all season long, especially in the second half, how they couldn't score in the first half. And then all of a sudden in the second half, they just had a burst of scoring. They had goaltending. They didn't know who was going to be the starting goalie. It went from, who was the starting goalie?
It was Binnington at the start, and then their young kid, Husso.
And then Binnington took over again, and he's been the goalie throughout the playoffs, really, since the first round of the playoffs when they knocked off the Wild. We've seen Binnington do this before. He won the Stanley Cup. What was it? 4 years ago?
Yep.
3 years ago against the Boston Bruins, where everybody thought that the Boston Bruins were the best team in that series. And I did too. I thought there was no way St. Louis was going to win that series. It was a Cinderella story. And Binnington stood on his head. Absolutely stood on his head. And Tuukka Rask, who's won a Stanley Cup, just didn't play well in certain aspects of his game. And choked in the third, and I think it was the third and sixth game. And then Game 7, Tuukka Rask played well, but he gave up some bad goals.
Bad goals, yeah.
You know, and all in all, that's why St. Louis won. The Avalanche, they have so much talent. They have two of the best players in the league.
No.
They have one of the best lines in hockey. They could score. By the way, they're a great penalty-killing team and one of the best power plays in all of the NHL. And they have really good goaltending. Their backup goalie is just as good as their starting goalie. So the Avalanche, everybody's going to look at this series, and most people, I saw most of the experts have the Avalanche winning in 5 or 6 games. In this particular...
No, but they've been sitting around a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same
they've
thing.
Been sitting around a long time.
Who do you got in this series, Speedy?
I have the Blues as well. I actually think this was one of I had Minnesota initially winning the series against the Blues, but the Blues were actually my pick at the start of the season because of the leadership that they had. The Avalanche, it always seems to be the second round that hurts them. And it's exactly what you were saying, Beeve. They coast a lot in the playoffs, but when it comes to longer series, they haven't been as good. And being that this is a longer series, I like a more battle-tested Blues team that's still very good defensively and has good veteran leadership, even losing some guys from their cup team. They proved a lot against Minnesota to me. It was also a very deep team. Their veterans outplayed the Wild in the Wild depth.
I really like the Avalanche in this series. And I know they're a young team, and they really haven't really gotten into the Western Conference Finals. They've had problems jumping from the second round. I think with the talent that they have this year in Landeskog and McKinnon, Devin Taus has been sensational throughout the season, one of the best, more underrated defensemen in the league. This team could play with anybody, and they have goal scoring from the first line to their fourth line. They could do everything. They're a hitting team. They're young. They're fast. They're energetic. As much as I like what St. Louis has done and the leadership they've had and the experience they have, I really like the Avalanche in this series. I think they're the better team. I think they have the speed. I think this series could go 7. I think it's 6, Avalanche in 6. I think they're just the better team. As far as the Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, Speedy, what are your thoughts in this series? There's something about this series that tells me this could be the end of the Lightning's reign.
I don't think it comes yet, just because even though I know Carl's a little concerned about the depth with the Lightning not being as good as years past, but the Florida defensive depth is not great either. I love Ekblad and Weegar. They're both all-star caliber, number 1 and they're top 2 defensemen. After that, it's a pretty big drop-off. And the system is still strong with the Lightning where they've plugged a lot of guys in and still made it work to an extent. Yes, it's not the same dominant force, but I worry about that a little bit in comparison to the depth of the Panthers. And also, interim coach at some point, I think eventually he'll get out coached. So I think next round will be more of the issue for the Lightning, and down the road, if they have to play against Carolina, and definitely in the Cup too, I agree with you. If it comes down to the Blues or the Flames or Colorado, yeah, that'll be the end. I don't think it's this series, though.
Tampa's had problems on the road. Still good defensively. I mean, they can still score. Like, they're an older group, but I think they're going to win this series. I really do.
I know a lot of people look at Tampa, and yes, they dominated the game against Florida in game number 1.
Today, they won 4-1. You know?
And also, Florida
Their power play was really well.
What happened in the first series against the Florida Panthers? What happened in game number 1 against the Florida Panthers in the series before this? Florida lost the first game.
Yeah, they lost.
Okay,
yep.
And they didn't play well. Okay, they didn't. And I expect this series to be like that. This Florida Panther team.
Go 7.
This Florida Panther team. They have a lot of veterans. They added Claude Giroux. They have Joe Thornton here. They have veteran guys that have been there.
Yeah, but they don't have the experience like Tampa has.
Not as a collective unit, but still combined, it's still a good amount. My question is just with the defensive depth, really, against the Lightning offense, which is still deep. I know it's not as deep as years past, Carl, but it's still deep.
I look at the Florida Panthers. I look at the talent that they have. Yeah, their defense. Ekblad is probably the best defenseman on this team, and he's a superstar player. He's one of the best young defensemen in the NHL. And then you're looking at their defensive, style. I mean, Anthony Duclair, who used to be a Ranger, he's had a very good season. He's played very well in the playoffs. He's a good offensive player. Also is a good penalty killer. This is a very good overall Florida Panther team. And if you were to ask me right now who has a better 4 lines, Tampa or Florida, I'm going to tell you the Florida Panthers do. The Florida Panthers have more goal scoring. They have more offense, and they're younger and they're faster.
Yeah, that's true. But Tampa is older and wiser.
Tampa's been here before, and Tampa has gone to the Stanley Cup. Something tells me this series is going 7, and there's something about this Florida Panther team. Even though a lot of people say that this team is still kind of trying to figure things out and trying to figure who they are as a team, I think that this could be the Florida Panthers' year, and I'm gonna take the Florida Panthers in this series. I am. I think Florida wins in 7 games. They have home court advantage. They have home ice advantage, and if this goes to a 7th game, the advantage goes to the Panthers. Now I know what you're going to say. Well, the Panthers just lost game number 1 at home. Oh, my God. I didn't expect the Panthers to win every single game.
I didn't think Tampa was going to win 4-1. I thought the game would be a lot closer.
Oh, stop. It's one game.
It was 1-1 most of the game.
And Bobrovsky is one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, okay? And he had a bad game. I know what you're going to say. Vasilevsky is just as good. Yeah, no question. But Bobrovsky's been a successful goalie in the playoffs. He's been a successful goalie. He's won the Vezina Trophy before. This is
Twice.
He's a great goalie. It's not like you have a crappy goalie that can't stop a puck.
No, I'm not saying that.
No, I know what you're not saying. I'm just saying what you saw in Game 1 is not what you see in Game 2, and what you're probably not going to see in Game 3 either. Okay,
No.
it's one game.